What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the new weapon refines for Cecilia, Legion, Setsuna, and Shiro, which we got with this update, and I'm also going to be going over their builds. So with that said, let us begin. Cecilia got a pretty boring but quite practical weapon refined. So Tome of Order has got effective damage against flying units, which is referenced to Air Caliber Tome in FE6. And it is a Raven Tome, and her weapon refine is just Triangle Adept. Now this is definitely much better than a lot of the Triangle Adept refines that we have got over the years. The main reason is that Raven Tome mages do run Triangle Adept as it is. So the best part about this weapon refine is that it frees up her slot A skill. And this isn't really anything fancy, but being able to run some other slot A skill while also enjoying the Triangle Adept effect against colorless units and blue units is really good, and she can be a pretty nice check to Legendary Leaf, Legendary Crom, Legendary Alm, and just all kinds of range units and colorless units which you face in Arena Assault or Ether Raids. So she is still a pretty fantastic counter pick unit, and this weapon refine just doubles down on her role. The flying effectiveness is a nice bonus, as you will see later on in the builds. And the main problem with Cecilia is that she's a horse unit, so she cannot really inherit null counter disrupt to one round KO staff units and fire sweep units, who can be really annoying. A lot of people, including me, were expecting null counter disrupt as a weapon refine, but of course they're not really going to be giving that to a free to play unit. But Triangle Adept isn't really all that bad. Sure, it isn't really all that fancy, but it does get the job done, for which Cecilia is really popular for. Now I feel like I should really mention this because a lot of people run Triangle Adept on her slot A before this refine. So keep in mind that Triangle Adept refine does not stack up with Triangle Adept slot A skill. So do not run both of them, you need to update your slot A skill. And if you are just running a budget Cecilia so far, then here are some budget options that you could run on slot A. Distant defense is of course really good, and you could also run sturdy stance. Guard in slot B can help her because a lot of the times tanks have issues facing units who can be tanked as long as they don't trigger their special. So guard is going to be helping you with that, and distant defense is of course a pretty nice budget option as well. Cecilia is going to be a really nice counter pick unit in Ether Raids as well, because she can run Bracing Stance 3. Any kind of tier 3 stance skill is going to be really good for her because she gets the guard effect, and Bracing Stance is by far the best. And you could use this in the light season, having the Triangle Adept refine and having Quick Riposte, Fierce Stance, and Pulse Smoke. And this kind of refine makes her a very strong unit against the teams who don't really have a lot of red nukes, because she can easily take on Bramimons for days. Even a plus 10 Bramimon will struggle to do a lot of damage to Cecilia, especially if you have pulsed him down and if he doesn't have a special ready. So there Cecilia can definitely shine. If you don't have Bracing Stance, then any kind of tier 4 stance skill is going to be much appreciated on her. And if you want to go with the speed route, then you could just refine her weapon with the speed refine instead of going with the Triangle Adept refine. And this can definitely make her a bit more flexible, because at times she can take on some red units because she isn't the most squishy unit at max investment. And you could easily run attack speed solo, speed rest solo, and this kind of Cecilia will hit over 50 speed without any kind of visible buffs. So that could be done if you are into that kind of build. And as I said, flying effectiveness is really good, especially really good in dark defenses, because Cecilia has got a major advantage against all kinds of light mythic units, Peony, Air, and Mila. Against all of them, Cecilia has got a weapon strangle advantage. So if you're gonna be using her in dark defense, I feel like running speed refine is a bit better, because Triangle Adept refine could restrict some of your matchups and damage output, which could be useful at times. And you could just run a fast Cecilia like this, or if you're on a budget, just run double Death Blow. And this kind of Cecilia can be really threatening to many players, because she will just one-shot Air, Peony because of the flying effectiveness. She also has the weapon strangle advantage, and Mila will just get doubled, and Cecilia does have triangle advantage against her as well because of Tome of Order. So this could be potent in Dark Season against light mythics. Legion always face quite a bit of competition from Linus and Raven, but with this weapon refine, Legion is just very insane. So he's obviously the winner of this batch. He's got an extremely good weapon refine that gives him a strong matchup against buffed foes, and overall the effects of this weapon make him really strong. So in short, this weapon's primary effect is basically the reverse of Chaos RAGNELL of Fallen Ike. So the weapon does have Panic Smoke built into it, similar to Legion's Axe, But before you panic them after the combat, you will still get something, and that is in combat panic essentially, because if the foe has got a +7 attack bonus, then he inflicts double of that in terms of penalty, so that will nullify their buff and then give them a -7 attack penalty on top of that. So that can be really powerful because visible buffs are quite common most of the time, so that makes him a very strong unit. And the weapon refine is also really amazing because at start of combat, if the foe is above 75% HP, then he gets +5 attacking speed during the combat, and also special cooldown charge +1 per hit of Legion. So it's basically like a blade effect of Flashing Blade or Heavy Blade, but it doesn't really check those stats. It instead checks for the HP of the foe. If the foe is above 75% HP, then he gets the special cooldown, and this is a pretty nice effect actually, because it's not really hard to face enemies who have got more than that HP. It isn't really as restrictive as some of the weapon refines that only work when the foe is at 100% HP, so that's really good. And this kind of special charge also makes him really good as a Gale Force unit, and he can just abuse specials without running a Blade Seal, and that just opens up a seal slot. And his offenses were never really too bad, they were always pretty good for an old unit, and having +5 attack and +5 speed is just gonna be amazing for his offensive prowess. So Legion went from being a very underused unit to being a very solid unit with this weapon refine, and I can definitely see a lot of people building him up after this weapon refine because it's really solid and it just does so much for him. And this is really unique as well when it comes to a lot of the free-to-play options that we have. This straight up looks like a weapon that a 5-star exclusive unit would have, but this is present on Legion, who's present in the Grail pool, and his Grand Tour battle has been rerun so many times that you might as well have so many copies of him lying around in your barracks. And if you just want to go with a basic build without using too many resources, then you could easily go with Fury Desperation. He already comes with Fury, and you could go with Moonbow because he'll be able to trigger that when he's in the Desperation range, thanks to the special cooldown that he gets from his weapon. You could also run him with Gale Force and have Cook on Pulse so that he can have a 4-turn Gale Force at start of a map so that he can even Gale Force off of a ranged unit. And if you want to go more investment into him, then you could definitely make him as a repel, spurn, or close call tank, I guess, utilizing his speed, because he essentially has 47 speed with his Sneering Axe effect active, and it's not the hardest effect to get active, and he could easily use Speed Rest solo and Speed Smoke along with a damage reduction skill to be a pretty good tank. And he does have really good stats for this. He does have the speed and he does have high HP, and his defenses are not really that high, but he can be deceptively bulky with this build. You could also run an expensive Gale Force build with Time Pulse. He could always trigger Gale Force when he's in the Desperation range because Time Pulse will make Gale Force a 4-turn special. Now, Legion is going to be amazing in a place where visible buffs are used most of the times, and that is in Aether Raid's defense. So on offense, people are always going to be using visible buffs, and there he's going to be a fantastic unit because he doesn't care about those, and he will have the panic effect in the combat, and he will also inflict panic smoke after the combat. So you could run him as a frontline unit. He is pretty bulky again, so you could run him with Quick Riposte, Sacred Seal, and Guard. Guard is just there to stop the Gale Force shenanigans, but you could also run Null Follow Up or a lull skill if you want to, and he does have high HP to be fit into an Infantry Pulse team and just work as a good frontline unit overall. You could also use him as a Rally Trap unit. I would say that Anima Season is pretty good for him because Thrasier does have good synergy with the panic he can spread, so that could just activate her killing intent. But yeah, he could also be run as a Rally Trap unit by utilizing something like Ground Orders with a Mirabilis, which is really common. So you could have the new Steady Impact skill and use him as a Gale Force lunge unit, and he's going to be bulky enough to the point where he could act as a Wings of Mercy anchor for your other nukes, and also just spread panic smoke. And this could be a really good thing for your team if most of the time people just park a tank in front of your team. So against those kinds of units, Legion can definitely just panic them and then get to the back line of their team. I still remember when we got skill inheritance in FEH. Setsuna was crowned as a quad queen essentially because her Brave Bow build was quite insane as she could do quad attacks, and that was a really big thing for 2017. But as time went on, she just fell off, and there are just so many really good archers, and unfortunately this weapon refine doesn't really do too much to save her. She's definitely much more viable now, but still there's quite a bit of competition for her. So Setsuna's Yumi gives her +4 to all of her stats against ranged units, and her weapon refine gives her +5 attack and speed, if a bonus is active on her, and it also neutralizes any kind of penalties to her attack and speed, which is really good because Setsuna's speed is quite high for an old unit, so she could be targeted by shield speed a lot of times. So this is not really that bad of a weapon refine, honestly, but it's not really too good either to save Setsuna, and this is not something which a lot of people and a lot of her fans were expecting, because a preferred Brave Bow with a -2 speed penalty would have been much better for her, or something that has to do with traps and in general stuff like that. But this bow doesn't really do anything like that. So she effectively gets +9 attack and speed versus ranged foes, which is really good, and it does help her a lot. And the best part of her weapon refine, in my opinion, is the fact that she can ignore this attack and speed debuffs, and this could be really useful in many of the game modes, as debuffs are quite common. Unfortunately, versus melee foes, she's not really going to be getting the extra stats from the primary effect, and this overall just restricts and limits her usage and her viability, in my opinion. Her refine condition is easy to active, and you don't have to buffer her up all the time. You could also buffer up with positive status like Divine Fang or Dominance or stuff like that, and she will still activate this kind of effect. But as I said before, she's still going to be facing a lot of competition from 3-star, 4-star units, mainly Rebecca and Norn. So the thing with Rebecca's bow is that it gives her -1 special cooldown. She doesn't really get +9 attack and speed like Setsuna, but the -1 special cooldown is quite significant. And Rebecca's bow is a bit more universal, so she just needs to have any kind of buff to get +4 to all of her stats against both melee and range units. Meanwhile, Setsuna's thing only works against range units. Rebecca trades a bit of speed for some resistance, which could help her in tanking, and this kind of buff that she gets from her bow, as I said, is universal. And Norn, of course, is going to be there as a competition for both of them, because Norn just has way better bulk than both of these, and Spendthrift bow is absolutely insane as a better guard bow and also for giving a lot of damage output. So Setsuna will still struggle when compared to these two units, particularly from the 3-star, 4-star pool. So that is Setsuna. I wish they did a bit more for her weapon refine. If you want to use a budget Setsuna, then you could just go with a good old Fury Desperation and use Flashing Blade to utilize her speed. And one game mode which gets dominated by a lot of range units is definitely Ether Raids. So Setsuna can work as a pretty good Ether Raids range tank, especially in the Aster season, mainly because of how her weapon functions. So she can ignore the attack and speed debuffs if her condition is active, and Mirabilis will cause the attack debuff from her dance, and she can get hit by shield speed, so she can just ignore those kinds of debuffs, and that's really strong with her high speed. So you could just commit to that range tanking life and have distant defense for, have null counter disrupt, and have pulse smoke. So she could be a counter pick against a lot of the teams which don't have too many melee units and mainly rely on their range units. So their Setsuna could be strong. Because she does require a buff for her effect to be active, you could just run bonus doubler. But keep in mind, panic will ruin both of these things, so that you definitely have to watch out for that. And you could also run player face focused builds, utilizing her high speed with stuff like attack speed push 4 or flashing blade 4. The final refine we have is for Shiro. So Shiro always was a pretty rare unit that not a lot of people run because of him being a 5-star locked unit, and he faced competition from Lucas, of course, who was in 3-star, 4-star pool. This is a pretty basic but good refine. I see a lot of people trashing this refine, but I don't think this is a bad refine per se. The problem is that this is present on Shiro, who's a 5-star logged unit, and he's an old unit, so he needs merges to catch up with the new gen infantry lance units. And that could be quite troublesome for a lot of people to just save up orbs and to summon for him. And even after that, like, he will face an uphill battle versus like new and lance infantry units like female Chris, who pretty much does the same thing with her lance, but she just has a better stat spread. And also Geese, who is present in the Pirate Banner as a 4-star focus unit, so he could be plussed and merged way easily than Shiro could be. So Bright Naginata has got Sturdy Stance 2 built into it, and also a Guild Fork type of weapon refine, except this refine ignores all kinds of penalties instead of just ignoring attack and defense penalties. So being able to like ignore the penalties is always going to be a really good thing. And he essentially gets +9 attack and defense in the enemy phase, so that just makes him a very strong physical tank. And he also doesn't care about any kind of debuffs, so that does make him a pretty strong unit. But as I said, the problem is that it's locked to Shiro, who's a quite rare unit, so not a lot of people are going to be investing too much into him. If you just want to run Shiro with a budget build, you could just go with Steady Stance 3 and Sturdy Stance Sacred Seal and have Bonfire. If you want to invest a bit more into him, then Sturdy Stance 3 is going to be giving you the guard effect, which any kind of tank appreciates. A loud skill is also going to be nice. And for the Shiro fans who are really dedicated to him and are going to be plus in merging him, then you could definitely go for a build like this with distant counter and speed res solo. He already has plenty of attack and defense. You could patch up his speed and resistance with this, and null follow up is pretty nice with his speed stat because he does have better speed and better resistance than Lucas. So at plus 10 merge, he can definitely be a pretty strong overall tank. So that is the badge for this month's Weapon Refine. Next month, we're going to be getting Choose Your Legends 2 Weapon Refine, so I'm really looking forward to it. As for this badge, I feel like Legion is the clear winner out of all of them because the weapon that he got was definitely quite insane, and I don't think anyone really expected that. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this helpful. Please be sure to share this video with your friends who are thinking of building any of these units. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support. If you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And also subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Setsuna's Yumi against melee range units. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.